Hello and welcome to the One Take Show, a podcast where we celebrate incredible conversations with some fantastic people. Ladies and gentlemen, joining me in this amazing episode of the One Take Show is Mr. Prakshal Jain. Prakshal is an associate with Trilegal in the disputes team, and if you are not aware of why he is here on this podcast, this is why.
Commercial arbitral awards and undermine jurisdiction of national courts. How would that happen, members of the tribunal? What parties would start doing is that they would have an arbitral award. Since they are not being able to enforce it in national courts, in a period of 2 to 3 years, 4 years, they will just come before an investment tribunal, ask them an equivalent amount in compensation, and undermine jurisdiction of the national courts.
Prakshal is a brilliant mooter. He is an amazing orator. And he's also the winner of FDI Moot 2017. And when I say FDI, I mean the world rounds. Yes, I think his video has helped me personally and a lot of law students who are trying to prepare for arbitration moots. I personally benefited a lot while I was preparing for Justice R.K. Tanka moot. The style of speaking, the mannerism, the preparation, the argumentation is very unique. And this episode is especially for every law student who wants to improve as a speaker and wants to learn from someone who has done it at the highest level. Hence, ladies and gentlemen, let's jump right in. All right, the One Take Show. Welcome to the podcast. I am so happy to have this opportunity to talk to you. I think Prakshal Jain is a name that every law student who is even remotely interested in anything to do with arbitration or moots has 100% come across, because your FDI 2017 finals video has become a staple sort of an inspiration for everyone who wants to look up to the standards that the exceptional speakers have set for any moot. So obviously, I'll keep going about this because I'm a huge fan of that video and I've used it for my own personal purposes as well. But thank you so much for taking time off your really busy schedule and sitting down with me for this beautiful conversation that we're going to have.
Thank you, Kaustubh. As I said, it's been long impending. Due to some of the other issues, we kept delaying it. But that video thing, it is quite flattering. I'll tell you a couple of things about the video, as well as, what people think about arbitration and everything during the course of this conversation. People will know a lot more things. I think this will be more helpful for people who have seen me as a guy who has done arbitration moots. So maybe some things will be revealed during the course of the conversation.
Perfect. The purpose of the One Take Show served right there.
Yeah.
All right, I'll jump right into the first question that I have for you. Is the mandatory question that I ask every guest of mine is why law? Like, what inspired you for getting into law, continuing with law, and what was the experience in law school like that motivated you to whatever achievements that you've had or the opportunities that you've exploited?
See, I have no fancy answers to, that something inspired me to take up law. Not really. When I was in class, I think class 9th, sometime 8th or 9th, is when I was exposed to speaking activities. This included Model UN and debates, etc. Standard procedure at school level, right? And that is when I understood that I have a knack for oratory, also for, sort of critical reasoning and things like that. That is when I also came in contact with a couple of my seniors who were pursuing or who were, aiming at writing the CLAT, and they were in class 11th, class 12th, so they were preparing for CLAT. So they introduced me to this concept of NLUs, law as a profession. So I come from that family where, typical family where either you are an engineer or a doctor or a CA, right?
Yeah.
So that way law was not much of an option for me.
Right.
In that sense. So I was only introduced to law as a career, as a profession in class 11th and 12th, sometime 10th maybe. But again, my parents weren't very convinced with that idea. So all of class 11th and 12th, I did the hard work of, preparing for IIT JEE. I tried to convince my parents, but somehow it didn't work out. Eventually, at the end of class 12th, is when my parents got convinced that maybe, okay, CLAT, yes, fine,
Yeah,
lawyer,
yeah.
right, okay. So that's when I started preparing for CLAT. So to answer your question, I mean, it was just the fact that, I realized that I do have an oratory skill. I also, I like keeping up with developments. I like reading up on general knowledge stuff. And I also, like critical reasoning, logical reasoning, all of that. So
Right.
so basically all the ingredients that were required to clear the exam and get
Yeah.
into a good institution,
Yeah.
I thought I could meet. And that is
Right.
how law came up as a career for me
Right.
towards, say, 9th or 10th class.
Okay. Okay. I mean, obviously, was it like your parents were influenced by those coaching classes who were selling CLAT like one of the professional courses which will get you jobs if you stay with CLAT and stuff like that?
Actually, that precisely was the problem. The problem
Yeah.
was that my parents weren't convinced that this will get me a good enough job.
Okay.
That was actually the issue,
Okay.
which frankly it is not now. Now I think it's become a lot more prominent, and
Yeah,
NLUs
for
have
sure.
taken off. Back in 2010, I mean, it wasn't that much of a big deal.
True.
I'm talking about the year 2010 when I am entering class 11th, and when my career is to be decided, right? 9, 10,
True.
11th, right? So at that time, it wasn't a big thing. So my parents hadn't heard about it as a profession and didn't want me. As in, there is a saying that goes. My father used to tell me often कि जिसको कुछ नहीं आता है वो
वो
वकालत
वकालत कर लेता है.
So that
Right.
is जो वो LLB करता है
वो
basically.
LLB,
जिसको
yes.
कुछ नहीं आता है वो LLB करता है. So I think that was the mindset, and that is why I had a tough time. So, but eventually, as I was able to convince them that I can get my bread and butter with this activity, not an issue, and I might be very bad at the alternatives. So
Right.
please let me pursue this.
Perfect.
That's when I took a month-long crash course. And I don't know if you know, I was in RML for 1 year.
Yes. That I was going to
right.
ask you this. Like, you made it to NLS, but before you spent some time in RML as well. How was your time
No,
at
so
RML?
it's a very interesting story. So I gave CLAT first in the year 2012. I got into HNLU.
Okay.
HNLU, I spent about a month there, along with a couple of my RML batchmates. I mean, I honestly, not to say anything against the institution, it's a fabulous institution.
Yeah.
I did not like, somehow I could not adjust at the institution. So
you just say that you preferred
RML
RML over HNLU and RML 1 in that case. Yes.
Yes. I mean, a few of us, in fact, not only me, it was 3 or 4 of us.
Yeah.
3 of them, the other ones were all from Lucknow, by the way.
Oh, perfect.
You will remember, I think they've done Rajat Datta, if you know.
Yes,
he's right now
Mr.
pursuing,
Datta, yes.
He's done his management from IIM Ahmedabad. So,
right.
So a couple of us then moved from HNLU to RML. So I spent a month at HNLU. Then I came to RML, and the campus catches your eye, and you see, wow, what an institution, what a sprawling campus you see. You see that Olympic-sized swimming pool that is there.
Yes.
Back in our time, of course, it was just a party place, never worked.
Right.
But it was there it was used for semester end parties.
Okay.
When I was in first year back in 2012, because it wasn't a functional swimming pool, it was just built. Then of course the auditorium that is there, the smaller one as well as the bigger one. So it just catches your eye, and you're like, I've come to the perfect place. I enjoyed my time at RML. To be very honest, I loved my time at RML. And that is when I was first introduced to mooting. I don't know if Conquer still happens.
It does, and I was the winner of Conquers. So if you are did you do Conquers?
Yes. So yes, I did Conquers in my that was actually the first Conquers Moot.
Oh, really?
In my year, that was the first ever Conquers that happened, and I won that.
This is good. This is great. Wow.
Right. So
I'm meeting the OG winner of the Conquers. I'm talking to the OG winner of the Conquers.
Yes. And I remember that final round. I will remember. It was a bench of 5. Hari sir was there.
Oh, Hari sir was there. Right.
Yes, Hakim Yasir Abbas sir was there. Bhaskar Subramanian, some of the best mooters I think that RML has seen. Some of the finest of them were sitting. We are arguing a consumer law problem, and they grilled me to death. Like both of us.
I can imagine.
It was an experience. Let me just say that it was fantastic. It was an introduction to mooting. Of course, see, my idea was that Now the reason I've come here is because I want to speak, right? My oratory is the reason. So mooting was it was a no-brainer. I have to take up mooting, right?
Right.
So I immediately took it up. It was, I think, about a week or two, and I think I went with the single-minded focus of I am not going to back out of this. I have to complete this, come what may, whatever be the result. I have to just complete this. So I went in with full force. It was an enjoyable experience in the first go itself. And when when you win it, you're like, oh, I can be in it for the longer run, right?
Yes.
So it was a fantastic introduction to mooting back then. Hari sir was actually the convener of MCC in that year.
Absolutely wonderful. Brilliant. Yeah. Hari sir is one of the finest people I've met. We still are very good. Like, we keep inviting him to judge our flagship book, and Hari sir has recently drafted our problem. Wonderful person. I can just imagine how wonderful would it have been for you to face him,
to argue in front of him. Yes, as a first year student in the second month of law school, facing Hari Krishnan was. I mean, you can say it was great in retrospect. You can say it was a great experience. But when I was doing it, I was sweating in that air-conditioned room. It was a nightmare, to be honest. I remember.
Right.
But yeah, so that way, I think that was my first brush with mooting as an activity. I also did in fact, I was a member of the DDC. The debate and discussion committee in my first year. I joined the DDC, so I had the choice of between joining MCC and DDC. I had that choice.
Ouch, that breaks my heart. I'm the MCC guy. That breaks my heart.
Right. No, my idea was that I can indulge with mooting outside of the committee as well, and I really like debating. So I thought might as well flip the coin. Said DDC it is. So that was also amazing. I think some brilliant people I met. Vinayak sir was the DDC convener for my year. So that was also a brilliant experience. Took part in debating, which only after reaching NLS I realized is not debating. It is not close to what debating is, which I'll come to later actually. But I enjoyed it there, it was a great time. I participated in all sorts of activities, from mooting to debating. Then there was some skittle with the MCC, which I will not go into for the purposes of this conversation, of course. Those are, of course. Those are things, stories of the past. But
DDC
so
MCC
I happen to do.
Always runs. The narrative is that DDC MCC versus is always on.
No, mine was outside of that. Mine was just, a first year lost somewhere, sort of a thing, if I say in retrospect. But so I happened to then do the BR Krishna Moot with Ryan Wilson.
Ryan sir.
Yes. He's right now, I think he's doing great in IPR law, from what I know. I keep following him on LinkedIn and all. So we did an IP moot actually. We did BR Krishna, which is an IP moot.
Wonderful.
That was my first brush with national mooting. The only national moot that I've done, by the way, was at RML. That was also a good experience. Of course, we didn't make it anywhere. But not to take anything away from the experience being a speaker in my first year at a national moot. It was brilliant. He's the guy. I think Ryan is the guy who taught me a lot of things. He picked me up when nobody was trying to reach out. So he picked me up. He said, "Why don't you join my team?" Taught me a lot of things. And eventually, even though the result didn't work out, it was a wonderful experience, so to say. So that was you are from RML, so you know how much enjoyment happens outside of it. In fact, in our time, you guys will be jealous of the fact that we did not have compulsory attendance there. So
what? Oh my God!
It was spectacular.
This is extremely heartbreaking. This is so sad.
Yes.
But I'm
cut this part for the people who might be jealous.
No. I am going to put this one out because I think this is going to bring back the old glory days of RML. I'm not saying that they are past right now, but I think the fact that we've had students like you and all the names that you have mentioned have really given our university the kind of credibility and the kind of legacy that we needed. But you've moved from RML to NLSI Bangalore. And my last question in this segment to you is a very direct one, for that matter, because I believe there must have been rather changes and the differences in, because obviously NLS is considered to be the best law school in South Asia, and especially in India, and National Law School provides a different standard of education for the time that it has spent in the Indian milieu. So what differences did you observe, and as in the quality of education, and what were the standoff experiences with NLS that you've had that somehow shaped your perspective towards your career?
See, it's very simple. The answer is one line. You're at NLS, your peers make you. Like when we went into college, that was the first thing we were told, that you will not be, you will not be known, or you will not learn from your faculty. You will not learn from your courses. You will learn from your peers, and that is true till date. Like 80 of the smartest minds from across the country come together, and you are challenged at every step by them. Right? You learn from them. It's a healthy sort of challenge, right? You gain from them. You are, at every step you are inspired to keep doing better and better and better, right? Because you know that your peers are so good. Why can't I aim at that? So your aim is always higher and higher, right? And you've seen people do that previously before you. Your peers are doing so well, so you want to do well, and you learn from them at every step of the way. In any skill for that matter. Speaking, I thought I was too good at it. I learned so much more. I realized I know nothing or close to nothing about it. Researching, reasoning, coming up with arguments, critical thinking, all of these are things that I learned bits from ground zero at college, from my peers, from my seniors. All this community of 400 people who are there across the 5 batches. You learn a lot from them. I think that's the key at NLS. It's just the fact that your peers, you learn a lot from them.
Right. Just to follow up on a previous mention that you've made, you've realized that debating is something altogether different when you reached NLS than what you've experienced in RML. So what exactly was that change? Because I'm really curious. I am all into the APDs and stuff. Yeah.
Yes. No, I can understand. So I'll tell you what this is just very, very personal. I'm not sure if it still holds value or not. What I realized at RML, it was more about oratory. It was more about the style of speaking. If you flawlessly deliver a line, or you can move around here and there, and you can show some action, some voice modulation. That's what got you debates. At least in the internals. For that, I didn't go for externals. So at least in the internals, I mean, throughout I saw that was the prevailing situation. Whereas when I came to NLS, of course, seeing the legendary debaters that there are, I realized that content was the king there, right? It was all about what you speak and not about how you speak. It's all about what you can come up in those, what kind of arguments can you come up in those 15 minutes, how you structure your debate, all of those nuances, that, I mean, I'm forgetting now because it's all a very, very blank sort of a memory from first year. I never debated, and I'll come to that. It's a very blank memory, but I remember how you make a start, then you make a premise, and then you do whatnot. Like it's a completely different ball game, and you learn the nuances of that. As a first year, you could just go in for practice debates, and there would be seniors from across batches coming in, giving you feedback, teaching you as to how to go about, how could you have done this better, etc., right? So it was an entirely different ball game. But I think by the end of first year, maybe, or my second trimester, somehow I realized that not my cup of tea. I did not like debating as much as an activity. No particular reason behind it. I just did not enjoy doing that somehow. So that is why I left that track pretty early and changed tracks, or so to say, came back to the original track.
Right. No, I completely understand. It's just that I can understand where you're coming from, but I'll be very happy to tell you that as your juniors from our university, I think we've made some very significant leaps. The idea that you're talking about are our seniors. I won't specifically name them because there are a lot of them, have taught us different style of debating and have exposed us to everything when there's the ARE and everything what you're talking about. So yes, perhaps there is a need for a little bit more of an engagement, perhaps between universities like NLS, which have this huge legacy and this rich background, to newer universities like RML or other such universities who can actually learn from all of this. But now this actually brings me to a rather very interesting part of our conversation. This is about your mooting experiences. I would love to know everything that you've used as your strategy for all the very selfish reasons that I have for myself. But I think that your strategies have been quite very effective. You've used them for one of the most important moots for any arbitration enthusiast, that is FDI. What was your strategy, not just in FDI, but in general? Were you always a speaker, or did you try your hand at researching as well? Or what were your general experiences? Maybe then we can get into the specifics.
I mean, I always wanted to be a speaker. So that was pretty clear. And it so happened that when I tried my hand at mooting in the first year itself, I got a good rank in the university selection rounds to be able to qualify for an international moot also. So one of my incentives, of course, was the travel. So I did the maritime law arbitration moot in my first year in MLAM. Which is organized by Murdoch University. So I got to travel to Hong Kong that year. So that was one of my incentives to do it. Strategy, if you ask me, my consistent strategy, I believe in being very, very thorough. Like I go into the depth of the issue that I get. Like there should be nothing about the issue that I will not know. How much ever time it takes me. I will only start drafting when I know that I have answered every question that could come to my mind pertaining to that issue. Before that, I will not start draft, and that has had certain bad consequences, certain delays in terms of my drafting. Sorry to a couple of my teammates here and there, but yeah, I mean, largely I've met timelines. So I believe in being very, very thorough, right? So every question that can come up, every issue that can come up in my issue. So in my first year when I was doing IMLAM, I think we faced issues of conflict of laws, like lex arbitrae, lex loci, etc. That interplay of laws applicable to an arbitration, to the arbitration agreement, to this. Reading dicey on conflict of laws. It was just a brilliant experience in the first year. So I went through all of that, and that actually it was a very stimulating experience. I enjoyed doing it. What I enjoyed, the main thing that I enjoyed was finding answers, knowing what the question is, and then finding answer to that question. I think that gave me a sort of a kick, right? I knew that this is my question. And then looking towards the answer, finding it, and then started drafting. And the same technique I applied to drafting my part of the memorials as well. I will not finish a paragraph till I read it 20 times, and I make sure that this is the best it can be. Like it just cannot be better than this, at least for me. Right. So I'm not the kind of person, not with projects, but with my memorials, I'm not the kind of person who will, go through, prepare a first draft, and then think about it. Not my deal. I make sure that, even if I'm writing 5 lines, I will read it in my mind, make sure that those 5 lines are the best possible 5 lines to me, of course. Greater people will review it and thrash it. That's a different story altogether. But to me, at least, it should be the best 5 lines I could express that argument in. And that is when I proceed. So the key for me has always been to be very, very thorough, to go in depth and get it done. And one important is the persistence. It will happen. You will see your peers enjoying. You will see people chilling, and that sort of. And you are still sitting. We have moot rooms at NLS, separate rooms, and you're sitting in that room and working there late in the night. But the point is that you have to persist, because the end game, the end result is what you enjoy, right? You go, you argue. And you get to travel. So that is what always kept me going. That that end result, even if it was the university selection rounds or it was preparation for the actual moot, I just kept that. Even when speaking of talking about speaking. So I've always been a speaker across the competitions that I participated in. I've always been a speaker only. Ably that way. So my key when I prepared my speaker notes, and I tell this to a lot of people who take practice rounds, is to make sure that I have an answer to every question that can come in my mind. right?
Perfect.
Every
Right.
question that the
Right.
others, so basically what I look is, I look at my memo for the other side. I see what arguments I've raised, and I answer each and every one of them in my speaker notes. So my speaker notes go like, used to go, of course, not now. Used to go like, this was the speech, and towards the left were the questions and answers to those questions. So that methodology I've always followed throughout 5 years of the competition, and of
Right.
course structure was key to me. Unless I used to read it in my mind and make sure that structure is making absolute sense to me till it made to the dot. If it didn't make sense to me, I kept making changes to it again and again
Right.
and again. And of course, then on practice rounds, you keep changing.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but the key through your research, to your drafting, and to the speaker notes is to be thorough, to answer every single question that can arise. I think that is
Right.
one takeaway that I will give to anyone who's interested in mooting.
Perfect. I think that's a wonderful advice. I'm really sorry I have to wipe my face. Lucknow is annoyingly humid right now, so it
Oh
is
yeah,
making
of
it very
course.
difficult. But anyways, the idea that you have expressed here is very useful, because personally also I can identify two very major factors. Firstly is to how to identify your opposite points and to prepare in full depth when it comes to taking arguments from the opposite side and listing them down and having this proper mechanism that really helps you out. Although I will be watching this recording again and again to make notes for my own self, and I think everyone will who will be listening to this podcast. This brings me to your journey with a very specific mood, that is FDI. So before you answer whether like how your journey with FDI was, what all your strategies was, how many other moods did you go for, and how much?
I have done 5 moots.
Okay.
Sorry, complete your question.
No, like what was your experience with those? Let's say 5 moods.
Yeah, so as I said, I started with IMLAM in my first year.
Yeah.
Then I did Oxford Media. That was the only
Oh, okay.
non-arbitration moot that I have done.
Okay.
Oxford Media, that Oxford, the University of Oxford organizes brilliant, again,
Yeah,
very
true,
good
true.
competition. Then in third year, I did Viz, the dream of any person
arbitration
who's
mooter.
interested in arbitration.
Yeah.
And by then, I think I was pretty much done with the activity. But then fourth year came, and I thought, okay, Frankfurt was there. Frankfurt was a sort of like a holiday mood for me. I thought, okay, I'll get to chill, go to Europe again. So I did Frankfurt Investment Arb in my fourth year, which then introduced me to Investment Arb, which is a field I really like actually. Investment arbitration, treaty arbitration, so to say. So that was fourth year. And of course, by fourth year, I was like, I'm done with this activity. I enjoyed the activity, no doubt. But then 4 years of it was more than enough. And then I thought, then FDI somehow came up, realized it's in Boston. So chance to go to the US again. So then in my final year, I convinced myself to do the FDI Moot. So that's been my journey through moot court competitions.
Right. And how was your experience with FDI?
FDI, it was fantastic, to be honest. FDI national rounds, very well organized rounds. They are organized by Kachwaha in Delhi. Very well, or some of the great judges. Of course, see, not a lot of people in India are well versed with treaty arbitration, but in terms of at least questioning and all, it was quite nice. It was a good experience. The judges were knowledgeable judges. So I think there we made it to the semis. And therefore qualified for the international rounds.
Right.
The international rounds were, of course, in Boston. And again, brilliant judging. Some of the best judges that I've seen. And this time, people who actually had great knowledge of investment treaty arbitration, some great opposition teams, in fact. In our very first round, I think we faced a team, 2 members of which had won the Viz Moot for the previous year.
Wow.
So some great teams we faced
Did you
in
win
Boston.
That round?
And I actually don't remember. I don't think we did win that round. But I learned a lot. In fact, can you imagine, in my fifth year, my final moot and my first round at the internationals, and I learned so many new tricks. I learned things like, when you start reading, you say begin quote. When you end reading, you say end of quote. That was a thing I learned from that Argentinian speaker.
What's that? Can you please clarify? Yeah.
I mean, it's a very small thing, but so for instance, when he was quoting me only, so he said, look, the speaker one for the claimant said, begin quote,
Oh,
XYZ, end of quote. So
Okay.
it's just fantastic, right?
Yeah.
It's so smooth also. So some of those things I learned from that round. So the learning just never ended, to be very honest.
Yeah.
Then of course it was a great competition. But so I remember this when we were done with the prelims. We had no idea that we will qualify. It wasn't. I think we'd lost. We knew that we'd lost to the Argentinian team, and the second one was also dicey. So we thought it will be difficult. But I think, I don't know now, but I think we qualified as the 16th team. So 16 teams made it to the pre-quarters, and I believe we qualified as. So we were sitting in a Burger King nearby the venue, thinking, "Not happening, boss. It's just not going to happen."
Right.
And somehow it just happened. So that was so we made it to the yes. So I mean, that's what, no? So, and coming to that, I'll tell you, luck, and I will tell this to anyone who is. So, we made it to pre-quarters, right? There we faced a Filipino university, De La Salle University.
Okay.
Brilliant. Like, one of the best teams I have faced in any moot court competition. Brilliantly prepared.
Okay.
And we've lost a lot of rounds, very close ones, okay, where judges come and say, you were great, but sorry, and all of that. This round, we won 2-1. We won just by a very, very slim margin. And I will tell anybody who is listening, never be disheartened with a loss in a moot. It is so much dependent on luck. Everything, for that matter, beyond a point, just depends on luck.
Yeah.
It's not like a paper publication. It is an entirely different ball game. So your 1 hour, how the judge has perceived you, all depends on that. When we lost the round of 32 at Viz, we really did not believe that we ought to have lost that round. We knew that we had nailed that round, but we lost it, and it was a terrible feeling. When we won the pre-quarters, we didn't believe that we've lost it. We thought it was very, very tight, but we were very pleasantly surprised. Right? So it's all luck. So anybody who's listening, anybody who wants to moot, remember that it's luck at the end of the day. So if you believe, if your conscience is that I have put in my best foot forward, I have put in all the effort that I could have, that is more than sufficient. If you've learned from the activity, if you've learned how to make arguments, if you've learned how to speak, it's more than enough. Results beyond a point are not in your control. It's a lot of luck that plays when it comes to mooting. That's one takeaway that I will give to anybody who's listening to this.
Right.
So yeah, it was a brilliant experience. I will tell you actually, just one more thing I'll tell you, which is that, a lot of people tell me, as you said, and that was very flattering. Thank you so much for that, about the final rounds. To be honest, my finals was not my best performance. It was actually an underwhelming one. My semi-finals was the one that I was the most happy with. Like, that was the round where, it was my better side. It was the side that I was better prepared with.
Oh, okay.
And
the petitioner
I was so happy. I was so, yes, I think so. No, I think it was respondent in that. So I was respondent in the semis. I was petitioner in
you were respondents in the final. I watched that video far too many times. You were responding in the final.
Sorry. So probably I was better prepared for the petitioner. And that was the round that was very, very sad. Unfortunately, of course, no recording, but that was the round where I could answer every single day. And they asked me so many questions, I will tell you. So many questions. And I was so happy that I had contemplated each one of those questions. Like, each of them. You prepare so much, but mostly in my all other moots, those questions had never come up. But in this one round, every single question came up. Like there was a question on an argument that the other team had conceded, but the judge went ahead and said, I know they've conceded, but do you have an answer to this? And I said, yes, this is my answer to this. It was very, very sad. To a point where the judge took me to some queries on Bitcoin, etc. At which point I said, this I don't know.
Okay.
He was that interactive with me, but that was, I think, the most satisfying round for me, where, answering those queries. The finals, I think, was a bit underwhelming, to be honest. Mehta nailed the finals, thankfully.
Yes.
So my colleague, he nailed the finals. So mine may have been a bit underwhelming. So the stage, I had been so close to that stage on so many occasions, semi-finalist at Milan, etc. So being at that stage finally was sort of overwhelming for me. And maybe I faltered in a couple of places, but then we got lucky.
Well, that's something that you are telling us. If no one who watches that video will ever be able to make that out, because I think both you and Aditya, if I'm not wrong, was absolutely wonderful in that round. I personally have used your final rounds recording during my preparation for Tanka, my co-speaker Siddhant Ahuja. by the way, brought this video. There are two people, Siddhant Ahuja and Edwin Tangarajan. I'll give a shout out to both of them because they introduced me to this video. We were preparing for this boot, that is Tanka, and we fortunately so could win this boot only because I had a precedence like yours, which gave me the idea as to how to present myself, possibly because we as debaters are very vociferous. We use a very sharp language with huge body language, body movements and stuff like that. But your precedence with respect to arbitration moots, how to sit, how to prepare. So I'll get into that now. I think this is extremely important for anyone who looks forward to becoming a good speaker in moots. Is what were your strategies for speaking rounds? And I think this answer can scale anywhere from your preparation of arguments, which I think you've already touched a little bit about, but also how you sit while you're presenting, how do you spread out your notes, what do you have any strategy about that? Like how do you make a proper speech, or do you make notes and you spitball and stuff like that?
Yeah, so first and foremost, I've always had a speech. For all my moots, I have had prepared speaker notes. For Viz, I remember my teammates were so agitated because I was preparing speaker notes till almost the finals, right?
Okay.
I don't know, as in the finals, as in till before the start of the rounds. But the key is that by the time your first round starts, you should not have to use those notes. So I've always had notes with me. I take those notes to the rounds also. But by the time the round starts, you should not have to. You should have had done so many practice rounds, 10, 15, 20, any number, that you will not have to use those speaker notes when you reach the actual round, the first round that you give. All you carry it, of course, for your confidence. You carry it with you. See, the key to arbitration is nobody is seeing. You have your table, people can't see. So you can keep notes, of course, and you can turn them over also. That is also not an issue. Right. But it's the best is that you should be that prepared. You should have by-hearted that so much by then that you don't have to use those notes. So that was the key. I prepared notes for everything. As I said, my notes were literally everything, I will say. Literally everything, from good morning to here is my structure, to A, B, C, substructure. Everything was covered in the notes. Now, so I even used to write, now I will move on to my next argument. Everything was written.
Right.
I used to highlight things. Something was bigger so that it could draw my focus. All my authorities were written right next to the argument. The authority, who's the judge, everything was covered in those notes. Very, very exhaustive notes. Towards the left, so towards the right of the page, towards the right were the notes, and towards the left were the questions that could come up pertaining to whatever the argument was there on that page. It had everything. It had my authorities written, authorities, bit of a description of the authorities. I mean, who's the judge? Why is it relevant? If it's an author, why? Who's the author? Things like that, all covered in the notes. So pretty exhaustive notes. They were differentiated by well highlighted stuff wherever I have to end or I have to highlight. So because when you're looking at it, if something is highlighted, you can read it easily, right? So simple as that. So I used to highlight what must I draw my attention to during the rounds.
Right.
Pretty exhaustive notes, but not to use them in the round, especially arbitration. Notes are not to be used. That is one. Two, which I will tell the key again, I will repeat myself at the cost of repetition, would be to anticipate every question that can come up, because that is when you have to merge your answers into your speech. That is very, very important.
Right.
You cannot be startled by questioning. You cannot go on the wrong track by questioning. And the arbitrator should feel like you are naturally answering the question and you know everything. You just know it somehow.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That is the key to it. Like thinking about all possible questions and having answers prepared to each, written answers, like this is what I will answer, exactly written down. Right. That is the key, and that will later give if you keep reading that for 15 practice rounds, by the end it will give you and by the end of it you will then be prepared enough to not use those notes, to have it all ready, right?
Perfect.
That's very important. But again, you can't read from the notes. It has to be all. It has to come out like a conversation. Arbitration is very, very important that it just comes. It has to be like you and me talking right now. Right, with a little bit more of a smile, with some humor if you can put in. In fact, one of the reasons we lost Imlam was just style, and we realized this later actually, that style is the key in arbitration. Our content was much better than this team that we had faced in the semi-finals. Content-wise, we were much better. But style-wise, that guy was impeccable. He was an honorable mention oralist at Viz, and he was impeccable at his style. Admirable, and he could, and we remember he used the same dialogue to make the judges laugh in the semi-final. The final, he had his one place where he will make a joke on that particular thing, and the judges will laugh. And one senior of mine told me, if you can make the judge laugh, you've got the round.
You got the round.
That is the key.
Right.
That's why in Viz they tell you start with a nice quote, right?
Okay.
So I remember in Viz we started when we started, we said contractual relationships do not age as well as fine wine, something like that. So those stylish things are very, very important in arbitration. Not probably in a domestic, not domestic. So all of my whatever I'm saying right now is applicable to arbitration moots, mostly international arbitration moots. Domestic moots is a different ball game altogether. Domestic moots is more about answering because there they will badger you with questions and you have to tackle those questions. That's a different game altogether, right? Here in arbitration moots, increasingly that trend is changing, but the judges let you stick to script, right? Correct. So in that script, you have to impress the judges. You have to stand out in that script, right? Because if you're sticking to script, the other guy is also sticking to script. Who stands out? Someone who can do it with better style, someone who can, engage with the judges more, will stand out. This style trend is changing though. Now I've realized I've seen Viz also, I've seen FDI also. Questioning has become a lot. Like they really grill you hard. So it's changing, but still style matters a lot. Keep it like a conversation. Right. Keep it easy. You have hand movements, of course, can't be as much as I'm moving my hands in this conversation. You have to have your hands on your desk. You can maybe do a 1, a 2, a 3, or a 4, things like that.
Wonderful, yes.
Yeah, right. There are so many intricacies to the activity that we can spend an hour and a half just discussing such intricacies. But yeah, in some substance, make sure it's like a conversation, but a more respectful, more polite conversation. And see if you can make the guy on the opposite side laugh. If that happens, you almost take the round that way.
Perfect.
So yes, that would be my thing on speaking specifically at arbitration moots.
Right. I think all of these things, I have used them as it is. Like I've picked up clues from your video. Like I've taken intros of yours that you've used, like everything, starting off with a story. Hello, Honorable Tribunal. My name is Kaustubh Srivastava. I'm here with my co-speaker, said everything. Like I've taken everything and I have formulated it, and the experience has been phenomenal. Your argumentation, the way you've pointed out, you've answered the judges, their questions. In fact, what I'll do is I'll link the video down in the description. I think every listener deserves an opportunity to go through the video and actually cherish everything. But to learn about everything from you firsthand is an extremely wonderful experience in itself. I just have a last question for you. I think I won't take much of your time now. Is that with respect to mooting, one of the very constant questions from law students is how useful is that when it comes to employment? I won't repeat that question, but I think I would add a different perspective to it. We know you're working with Trilegal right now, which in itself is a feat. And your journey must have had certain strategies or additions. How big a role did mooting play with respect to adding the certain skill sets that you might have used during your time right now with the law firm, perhaps?
Well, I'll be very honest with this answer. Not much. Because see, I am a disputes lawyer in a law firm, right? So mostly we go to senior counsels because the matters are such high profile that we go to senior counsels for arguing. I'm not a counsel. I am just an instructing attorney for them. So I don't get, I think in 2 years, I have argued at one arbitration hearing, twice before the High Court and maybe twice before the NCLT. That's about it. So some 5 or 6 opportunities at best. I may be exaggerating that also, but that's it. That's it. Okay. Those are the number of opportunities I've had at arguing, right? Having said that, I think the research part of it, the drafting part of it has helped me a lot. It has helped me immensely. Even though, legal drafting when it comes to courts is a different ball game, but you start thinking that way, that critical thinking that a memorial drafting gives you. That is definitely helpful. The speaking skill, see, I'll be very honest, and I wanted to convey this. You don't need to do 5 moots. You do one. You do just one, and you do it to perfection. Make sure that you learn the requisite skills. That's enough for you. Because, of course, and if you want to litigate also, that one moot will teach you enough about court manners. To be honest, I was in that arbitration hearing, and I could understand the difference. I could see how, in fact, I use things like, may I invite your attention to so and so paragraph of this case. May I have a moment to look through the case? All of those things, and it was a different thrill altogether. I mean, definitely I would have ventured into litigation if not for, say, financial constraints, etc. But that's a different story. So the point being, your one moot or at max 2 moots can teach you enough of what, if at all you pursue disputes. See, if you're doing your corporate stuff, then hardly any of it will you be using, because your contract drafting or your due diligences that you do, they don't need what mooting needs. If you're a firm, if you're a disputes guy in a firm, then a couple of moots should be more than sufficient, because you will not get so many opportunities at argument. That won't happen. Very few opportunities, very rarely. I got these opportunities because my senior was not available on those days. Like the counsel that we have was not available. So I had to argue in that sense, speak once or twice before the NCLT, once before an arbitrator. That's about it, right? So if your aim is going into a law firm disputes department, do 1 or 2 moots, yes, but that should be more than enough for you, because that will teach you the critical thinking that is required to make arguments. That will teach you the research skills. These are 2 very, very important things. See, you will have to come up with novel arguments. You will have to, there will be situations where you will not have precedent. So you'll have to think about, okay, what argument can I make? And that skill mooting definitely teaches you. The brainstorming, that kick that you get when you're mooting, when you're sitting with your teammates, you're thinking about what arguments, what is my structure, etc., etc. 1 or 2 moots is sufficient for you to get that, and also court manners, right? Court manners also 1 or 2 moots is, by the time I did my second moot, I had enough to know how to handle judges, right? And that is very, very important. To be honest, it is very, very important to know how to be able to handle judges. If you can do that, it makes a difference. Trust me, I could see that a very brief part I did that arbitration hearing for, and I could see it on the face of the arbitrator. It made a difference when you can navigate properly, when you can use those skills. So it's important to do 1 or 2, but not more. You don't require more than 1 or 2. I did 5 because I didn't enjoy anything else. I would recommend, in fact, people to take up scholarly writing. I think that is much, much more important to any law student, because your moot will reflect in your CV, but what you've written, and if it's a well-written piece, you can, if you purely consider employability, if you give it to someone and they read and they're impressed, see, your mooting, they can't see the round, right? They can't see, okay, you reached round of 32. How do they know how you did there, right? But if you give that piece of writing to that person, I think they will be far more impressed. So I think the focus should be on scholarly writing. That will also teach you the required skills of research. I didn't like it, because I preferred, in that sense, because in a moot you knew what argument you have to make, because the issue is right there. In scholarly writing, you have to come up with issues. You have to think, what's the problem with this? That's something I probably didn't prefer as much, but I would say 1 or 2 moots is more than enough for you guys. If you're litigating also, for that matter, if you're not into firms, you want to litigate, then also 1 or 2 moots is more than sufficient for anyone interested.
I think I'll close this conversation with just last one extension of this question. I think it will be very criminal of me to not ask you this, but since you're working with one of the biggest law firms in our country, what essential skills would you suggest that we as law students can work on in order to make us, let's say, a little more employable or a suitable candidate, or something that should help us in order to make our way into this top game that you are in right now?
That's actually a very tough one. I mean, it's important to do a lot of internships. That is very, very important. That's the key. You do your internships, and you do internships in areas of law that are relevant to law firms. For instance, today IBC is relevant to almost every disputes department of every law firm, right? Because
Right.
it's the thing
Right.
right now.
Right.
Insolvency and bankruptcy code, matters on matters.
Mhm.
I mean, 60% of our work is in that field, right?
Mhm.
So you know that is relevant. So you do your internships there, so you can show that background. If you do one internship at Trilegal and you can impress the team that you know your law, so often we work with interns, right? So we'll go to an intern and we'll say this is the concept, and if the intern says, oh yes, I know about it, that clearly it's the first impression gets you right. Oh wow, he knows about this. He knows what a section 7, what a section 9 is under the IPC, things like that, right?
Yeah.
So be aware about the thing that is most important to the firms. Do a lot of internship. That way you will also figure what is most important for you.
Right.
Like for instance, and very, very important here is when I actually did real life arbitrations, I realized it is not what I thought it is. It is not something that I would want to do as a full-time career. Arbitration is nowhere close to what I found it while I was in law school. That was entirely different. This is different. I can go on about it, how it is different. I think that's, in the interest of time, I'll cut to the chase. The fact is, go get your internships. You will understand one thing, that what is good for you, and second is you will learn also what is relevant for the firm that you want to get into. Say like at Trilegal, if you want, so you need to know IBC, because that's, at least in Bombay, that's the majority of our practice, right? So if someone knows that well. And the other thing is, I think if you're exceptional at your work, I had this guy, this intern, who just knew his way through SCC like this. He just knew SCC so well, and we were working on a maritime matter, absolutely new matter. I didn't know anything about maritime law, nor did any one of my colleagues. So new for us, but he navigated his way through SCC to answer the most, obscure questions, for that matter, most obscure questions that you will take so much time to answer. He just knew how to navigate his way through and get me answers. So if you know your stuff well, if you know how to use the databases to do good research, I think that will, I think, impress the people most at internships. So get those internships, which are fairly easy. Be persistent, be very, very hardworking. That is important. Be ready to put in the hours, how much ever required from you. So hard work is key, and knowing the skills, the essential skills. See, I don't think people will give you drafting in a tier 1. They will not let you draft. But if you can impress them with their research, and we have such hectic schedules that if someone can get us good research in a good period of time, it definitely helps. So that would be key. So know the areas of law very well, read up on them, and this. And one thing is, start early. It's important to start early, right? I only realized that I want to be or do arbitration, or I like arbitration, in my 3rd year. By that time, I had lost so much time, which I could have focusing. I see kids right now, they're doing arbitration right from 1st year, writing articles on Kluwer, blogs on Kluwer. So I think it's important to realize your area. By 2nd year, I think you should know that. But make sure that you are just not going by the glamour. You've done it, you've seen it. Yeah. Because I made the mistake of, I'll not call it a mistake, but we didn't have time to do as many internships given our schedule, right? So I sort of went by arbitration just by looking at the glamour of the arbitration world. Everyone, the international arbitration glamour that there is, everyone wants to do that. I realized, not my cup of tea. When I actually did a couple of arbitrations into the job, I realized, of course I can do it. I like doing it a little bit. Can't do that as a full-time sort of thing, as opposed to, say, an IBC, which is a developing area of law. So you have so many questions, so many challenges coming up. So start early, know your area of law very well, and know the basic skills of researching very well, so that you can help your team and be noticed when you're helping.
Yeah, I think this is absolutely wonderful. Everything that you've told us, the essential part, the internships, how to exactly work in an internship to stand out, especially to all the members in the law firms. You talk about IBC. I think IBC, I personally consider IBC as one of my favorite subjects. I've recently been working on the interplay between arbitration and international commercial arbitration and insolvency, and how it can all work out. So all of this is extremely exciting and very enriching. overall, this conversation, I think, will add tremendous amount of value to anyone who tunes into this conversation. And everything about mooting, speaking, all of this beautiful tips and tricks that are going to benefit so many speakers, so many mooters, and finally to learn on the practical aspect how to actually go about mooting, picking up 1-2 moots and actually learning the skills to the death and using them in your practical application like internship. Thank you so much, Prakshal. I think this has been a wonderful opportunity for me. Do you have any closing remarks for our listeners?
Thank you, Kaustubh. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you. And for, I think, primarily your audience, firstly, I think, and I should have said this right in the beginning, but probably I said it before we started the video, but the fact is that I've been following this, your series of interviews, and it's really enlightening. So congratulations on a great job that you're doing. It will be helpful for a lot of people, for a lot of law students for that matter. So it's spectacular, the work that you're doing. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
And for the law students watching this, I would say that there is no substitute to hard work. It's a very cliched line, yes, but work very, very hard. It is very important to think about perfection. You can maybe skip doing a lot of things, but whatever you do, you do it perfectly. You learn it till the very end, and you will definitely succeed. So thanks, Kaustubh. It's been a pleasure having this conversation, and I'm sorry it got delayed for so long.
No. I think all this delay was all worth it, because this is the kind of conversation that the One Take show was principally based upon and wants intends on sending out to every consumer, every listener that we have anywhere around the world. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for this opportunity, Prakshal.